And Georgia, I will hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Stacey. Hi, everyone. Welcome to my little presentation on voice banking and message banking. A tiny little bit about me. So I'm based on the Gold Coast with Better Rehab. I have, if it's not obvious by the end of this session, I have an extreme passion for voice banking and message banking, and I use it nearly every day at work with my clients. So it's just a phenomenal piece of technology. So without further ado, I guess this is kind of a bit of an outline of what to expect today. Like Stacey said, it's going to be quite content heavy, and I can appreciate that maybe everything or some things won't sense to you, so I'm happy to kind of clarify things at the end. But we're going to be covering what voice banking is, what message banking is, the process of double dipping or doing the two together, what AAC and eye gaze is, a bit of a how-to guide on how to bank and then upload, the programs and equipment that you're going to need, and then I guess more specifically what the speech pathologist role is. If technology is our friend and we have time at the end, I'll do a tiny little demonstration of how to upload a message. So often what I find is people are quite confident with the voice banking and message banking. They can understand that quite well. It's more the tech side of things that can, I guess, lose people a little bit. So if I can just show you how simple it is to take a recording and upload it, and then approve it, and then, yeah, I think it'll make a lot more sense. So I guess voice banking, for those who aren't as familiar with it, is it's defined as a process of recording a large inventory of speech following a predetermined script. So that normally includes, nonsense phrases, sentences, passage readings, some singing, and then it's capturing a sample, and then it kind of, puts it into a computer. And what you get out of that is a synthetic voice. So the idea is that by recording a bunch of mixed phrases and mixed sentences and passages, it's getting a co-articulation, a big co-articulation of sounds. So it's got each kind of letter and sound combination, and then it mixes it with the computer, and you get a synthetic voice. So think of your Siris, Alexas. I don't know if everyone has a Siri and an Alexa, so think of old GPS voices, elevator voices, all of those sorts of voices is somebody who's recorded a bunch of silly sentences, mixed it with the computer, and then you get this output of a synthetic voice, a computerized voice that sounds, mostly like a person. So to complete the process of voice banking, you have to register with a voice banking service. So make an account online, you use a computer with an internet connection, you record, and then you upload, you send off, and then they send back a synthetic voice. I guess something to be really mindful of with voice banking is that you need quite a good quality recording. So, a good microphone, a quiet environment, and we need your speech to be relatively intact. So if there's a lot of slurring, if there's quite a lot of imprecision, if you are dysarthric, it is much harder to get a really good quality recording. And sometimes we aren't aware of that until we try and get a synthetic voice and we get the recording back, and it's not really what the participant was hoping for, or it's actually not that clear. So there is a lot of new programs coming out with voice banking, and there are some companies who are very friendly and very accommodating, and they only make you record 50 phrases. But if your voice is already dysarthric and a bit unclear, you could be recording upwards of 500 to 700 phrases. So voice banking it's imperative that you start as early as possible. With the nature of MND and getting a diagnosis and then obviously getting onto the NDIS can be quite a process. But as soon as you're linked in with somebody, start recording your voice, or as soon as you get a diagnosis, start recording your voice in some sort of system. So typically they say voice banking takes upwards, of about an hour to 2 hours. I guess that's being generous if you're comfortable with the tech. If your voice and your vocal quality and your speech is strong, you know, people do knock this over within half an hour if they're really determined. For somebody who might experience a bit more difficulty with maintaining a good vocal quality, it can take upwards of 8 hours. So it really does depend on, you know, when you're starting, what your voice and speech sound like, what system you're using, you know, whether you're comfortable with the tech. And, you know, obviously if you have a good support system or a speech pathologist linked in, that can sometimes make things a bit quicker. But if you don't, that can also be, you know, add to the time. So I guess something I want to flag with voice banking is that it's extremely flexible. So, you know, you end up with this synthetic voice that when you use it in a system, you can type any kind of word combination and you will get a passage or a voice that sounds somewhat like you with a little bit of, you know, computer in there. So it means that you have the flexibility to type anything that you want and be met with a voice that sounds somewhat like you. So they say that voice banking allows you to have free thoughts. So if, you know, you haven't pre-recorded another message, and we'll talk about that in message banking, then it doesn't necessarily matter, because if you type something and you have voice banking, then you will still be met with a voice that sounds, you know, close to you. It's an approximate. So as long as people are aware that it's not going to have your personality, your intonation, you know, it's going to sound relatively flat. So if you're somebody who says, "Hey, how's it going?" It's not going to sound like that. It'll be, "Hi, how are you going?" Very flat. Hopefully you heard a difference there. So it will sound quite flat. So often, I guess, a barrier that I experience with voice banking is that some people feel a real disconnect between the synthetic voice that they get and then their own kind of personal way of communicating. So they only kind of hear the computerized version of it rather than the little part that sounds like them. So sometimes we do experience a bit of a plateau in motivation after they get their synthetic voice, which is why you know, I'm going to be talking about some other options to really, you know, make the most of this voice banking as well. So just to recap, voice banking, it's a synthetic voice. It approximates your natural voice. There are some limitations. Some of the apps are free and some of them you will have to purchase. And you only have to pay that fee if it is an account where you have to pay. You only ever have to pay after you have actually listened to the trial or the sample of your synthetic voice. So if you do the process, send it off, get a voice back, and you listen to it and think, "It's not for me," you don't have to pay for it. And obviously in a system where you're only recording 50 messages, that's often not a big time waster. So people, you know, it is quite easy to access. I guess there are a couple of systems coming out at the moment which allow people to upload old recordings of themselves. So if they do get to a point where their speech is really dysarthric and they can't bank their own personal messages, but they still want a voice that sounds kind of like them, then if they have access to old recordings, so whether you're, you know, a teacher or whether you're a public speaker or whether you're somebody who took a lot of home movies, some companies can take that, cut that, and then apply that to a synthetic voice. You know, and again, I guess as long as people are aware that the quality will likely be different to if you were to record now with a good stable voice and then send it off. If there's lots of background noise as well, some companies can cut that out for you, but some companies cannot. So as long as people are aware of that, you know, I think it's a phenomenal system, and depending on which company you go for, some people get back a synthetic voice that sounds really, really, you know, quite similar to them. It just doesn't have that rise and fall of intonation and pitch. You know, I guess to complement that, we have a system called message banking. And I guess this is where my passion really lies as far as this software goes. So it's a system or a strategy for creating a pool of pre-recorded messages using your natural speech while it's still intelligible. They're becoming a bit more flexible with whether your speech is fine or unchanged, and whether it's, you know, a little bit slurred or imprecise. There are companies that are being a lot more flexible with that. I guess ultimately, because the recording is not going to be changed at all, if you're happy with the way that your speech sounds with a little bit of slurring and a little bit of imprecision, you are still eligible to do this. So it's not like the voice banking where they actually say, look, sorry, it's not clear enough, we can't get the recording over a computerized voice. This is, if you're happy with the way your voice sounds, by all means, bank your messages, record all your own personal phrases. I know in the States they're a lot more flexible with this, and a lot of the banked messages are people who already have, you know, impacted speech. So essentially, by recording as many messages, words, phrases, sentences, questions, people laughing, sighing, you can utilize those files to express themselves later in life, and the recording will not ever be changed. So I guess the reason why I absolutely adore this system is that it allows you to capture and preserve who you are as a person. So humour, you know, vocal quality, passion, and I guess just, it's like your whole identity just, you know, saved into a little sentence. And it obviously has your intonation and your expression. So for somebody like myself, that would be an absolute must, because me and my family talk with a lot of sound effects, a lot of, you know, we are very loud talkers. So having something that captures, you know, when I'm really happy or really excited, or, you know, that reflects maybe when I'm feeling a bit down, or if I'm trying to get my point across in a really stern way. Think of message banking as like your trademark. It's going to be exactly how you record it. So this process allows you to retrieve a message and speak it in your own voice. But it does not allow for the novel messages, so like spelling, so like what you can do in the voice banking. It doesn't allow you to spell and then get the same outcome of your banked message. So for example, and this will make more sense when I show you a little bit more of like what a screen would look like. But you can see on the picture here, you know, there's a list of categories. So this person's obviously banked those messages, as in they've recorded Harrison, it's morning, or hello, Brian, in a set way, and then that's how the message will be exactly written. But for example, if I was to type Brian, so if we're using the example of the picture, if I was to type Brian into my my speech generating device, it wouldn't come up with Brian how I've recorded it, unless I've recorded Brian in a separate singular recording. So be mindful that how you record it is how it's going to stay. So often what we suggest for people with message banking is that they kind of chunk things into categories. So I greet my friends very differently to how I greet my clients, or how I greet my family. So I wouldn't necessarily want one blanket recording for saying hello. I might say, hey, how's it going? Or I might say, hi, how are you today? So I would record all my different greetings in separate singular recordings. So that way then, depending who I'm talking to, I can have a recording that matches the situation, rather than maybe either a flat affect like the voice banking, or something that's really generic. So often with message banking, people can feel very daunted by knowing where to start, because it's, you know, how are you supposed to know everything that you might possibly want to record? Which is why we say start with the really important stuff, start with the most functional stuff. Family members' names, pets' names, greetings, farewell. You know, if you have a really distinct laugh, record your laugh. If you have a catchphrase that you're really well known for, if you greet your daughter or your son in a different way that you greet your wife, record those, because that's what you're going to want to continue sounding like you if your communication deteriorates to a point of relying on this full time. So we need roughly around the 700 phrase recording mark. That sounds like a lot, but if I was to say, hello, hi, how are you, what's going on, that's 4 separate recordings already. So it goes really quickly, and I haven't found a person yet that gets to 700 and thinks, yeah, I'm done. So they often will get to 700 and go, I haven't even started on my like catchphrases or my jokes. So start with the really important things, because if your speech becomes imprecise, then the recording quality will change. You can continue recording. There's no limitation to what you can record. So if you're recording, you're uploading them online, we're checking the accuracy, and then you're uploading them to your device. When I say you are, I mean I would be uploading them to your device, and then you can then start, writing a message. The really cool thing about message banking is that, there are endless possibilities for what you might want to record. So for example, I have 2 dogs. I knew I'd wrangle them in here somehow. I have 2 dogs, and I greet them, I have my happy voice, and I have my, oh dear Lord, you've done something wrong voice. So I would record that. So Monty, that's my dog's name, and then Monty. So the way that we would do that is we would say that on your recording as Monty happy and Monty naughty, or Monty bad or angry. So then when it comes time to perhaps calling your dog or saying, a person's name, you've got a range of different kind of intonations and expressions that you can use, which is so I guess the thing with message banking is that if you are finding that you have a recording that is not of use to you, we can delete it. We can also pre-program everything into a set category. So, I've got clients who have 3,000 recordings in their app, and then I go through and tag kind of what category I think it might belong to. So we'll have greetings, we'll have, maybe a wife, like, mum, daughter, son, and then they're set in categories. So it's not like you're scrolling through 3,000 recordings. I just love it. So I could talk about message banking all day, but I won't frustrate you. I guess the thing with message banking is and voice banking, is that there are so many resources out there now that, it's a lot of information to digest. And I guess something to be mindful of, or something that I've heard with a lot of my clients, is that it can be a really big adjustment period. So particularly people who are newly diagnosed, they might have the suggestion thrown at them, you should record your voice. And it's just far too much information for them to take on board or to consider at that time. So, whenever it is that you get the referral for a person with, when you're assessing their communication, we just have to be adaptive and, provide them with whatever education and, systems they can use at the time. And I guess the beauty is that if they're happy with the way that their communication sounds, it's not really up to us to say, look, your quality's not good enough to record message banking. So I have a lot of clients who are quite dysarthric, and they still record their banked messages, and they're happy with that. I often say to my clients too, is that it's sometimes not always to benefit just you as well. Think about it, what is your family going to want to hear in 6 months' time, if your communication does deteriorate? Are they going to want to hear a computer version, a synthetic version, or are they going to want to sound or hear something that sounds exactly like you? And I find that often setting it, giving examples like that it really helps clients kind of understand, the benefit of it. So also just be mindful that it can be a very complex topic for people to get their head around. It's, it's a big wake-up call, I guess, to the reality of some of the communication changes that can occur with MND, which I do feel like often is maybe not highlighted quite early enough. So we do often get clients who are unaware that their speech was going to change. So I guess message banking too, this is the companies that I use, they're all free. So another great system. I'm sure there's probably systems out there that do charge a fee, but because there's nobody actually doing anything to the quality of the recording, all the companies I've found and all the companies I use, they're free. So yeah, it's a fantastic idea. So I'll quickly just talk about double dipping. I didn't name this, but it's essentially the process of you do your message banking, you record all of your recordings. So we typically say at least 350. When you get a really good bunch of recordings that are of a high quality, you can then send those recordings off to your chosen voice banking provider, and then they can send you back your synthetic voice. It normally takes up to 3 days to get back, so it's a really quick turnaround. The reason why I recommend double dipping is because then you've got the flexibility of voice banking, so the ability to type anything you want with a voice that sounds somewhat like you, and your personality. So you've got kind of the best of both worlds, and it's not of no extra work to you. So it's if you do the message banking, you might as well double dip, because all you're doing is sending off a recording, and you're getting a recording back. So and it's of no extra work for the speech pathologist, in my opinion anyway. So if you're doing message banking, I highly recommend sending it off to get a synthetic voice as well. So it essentially eliminates the need for people to either choose which process might be better for them. You know, we would hate for us to push one voice banking over message banking, and then 6 months down the track they go, I really wish I actually did both. And remember, you can do the message banking, send it off, get a synthetic voice, and it will sit there until you want to download it and pay the fee. So, you can do both and not even use the synthetic voice. I really recommend this. But again, to do the double dipping, you need a good voice quality, because you're going to be mixing it with the synthetic voice. So if you can do 300-ish phrases straight off the bat, and they're of a good high quality recording, send it off. Send it off, and then you'll get your synthetic voice, and that synthetic voice is never going to change. So, it's something to consider, and I really recommend it, because what it means is that, so if we were to go in and type a message, a pre-recorded message that I've done through message banking, so I'm going to use the example of, hey, how are you going? That's something I say, to my friends or my colleagues. Hey, how are you going? That's going to be how it sounds. And then let's say I'm talking to somebody that I don't often talk to, and I haven't thought to pre-record their name. So it's going to be, hey, how are you going? And then I could type their name, Brian, and it's going to be, hey, how are you going in my message banking, Brian, in my synthetic voice. So it'll sound exactly like me, and then it'll change slightly to my synthetic voice, which means that you can write a whole passage, and for the things that you've recorded, like family members' names, greetings, a good chunk of that's going to sound like you, and then you'll have something that sounds mostly like you in between. So it's a really smart system to use, because you're not ever being then left with, hey, how are you going? Then a synthetic voice that sounds absolutely nothing like you, or it sounds a bit more American, or it's British, or something that doesn't match your vocal quality at all. So I strongly recommend this, and it's of no extra work, so definitely look into. Two other concepts that I wanted to touch on really quickly is donor banking and legacy banking. Donor banking is essentially a message banking by proxy. So people who have difficulty with the recording, if they have extreme vocal fatigue or pain, and they're not able to maintain, recording 300 phrases or 50 phrases or whatever it is, depending on the program you use, you can get somebody else to record the messages for you. So typically we recommend, obviously, them being the same gender and somebody like a family member. That's where you're going to probably get the thing that sounds closest to you. So, for example, if I was to lose my ability to verbally communicate, my sister and I sound very, very similar. And for me, I still believe that a message-banked voice and a voice that sounds somewhat like me is better than a voice that I do not relate to at all. So I would get her to do my recordings if she was willing. She's pretty nice, so I'm assuming she would. And then I would have a voice that sounds mostly like me. There are companies that have databases of banked voices, so suitable voices depending on age, gender, accents, a couple of other factors, but I guess they're the three big main ones. So you can put into the system, pardon me, I'm a 45-year-old male from Ireland. Obviously, they're not going to match your voice with a 16-year-old boy from Australia. So they try and match those voices as closely as possible. And then again, you're getting a synthetic voice that sounds more human than some of the synthetic voices out there. Donor banking can be hard, again, for people to wrap their head around. They feel like sometimes they're asking too much of their family members. But again, I guess it just really depends on what you want to get out of your speech generating device. What kind of vocal quality do you want to have, and what do you want your family to be listening to? So consider donor banking if you feel like you're at the point where you're ineligible for voice banking and message banking, because we have a couple of speechies here who have family members who are doing the recordings, and they sound really great, and the clients are pretty happy that they have chosen to go down that route. The last thing that I wanted to touch on was legacy banking. So legacy banking is essentially message banking, but however, what we find is people create longer videos or longer audio recordings with a meaningful message to family or friends that may not necessarily make it onto their communication device. So this is things like singing happy birthday, a good night message to their wife. What else have we had? A poem, a song. So things like that, if people are wanting to do that, but perhaps not necessarily have access to it on their device, but they want their family to be able to have that recording, you can do that through either message banking. One thing I actually didn't touch on with message banking, and I do think it's important, is that you don't need a high quality recording equipment or device to do the message banking. You need a high quality device and system for the voice banking. You need a high quality device and system for double dipping. So I say just go ahead and get a good quality recording device, because it's just going to save so much hassle down the track, and it's going to be far more consistent. And then we can support you through that as well, because if we're recording things like on our iPhone, on a headset, on it directly onto our laptop, unfortunately we can't really assist with how that vocal quality sounds. Whereas on the voice recorders, there are a couple of settings that we can set that I guess assist with things like wind or movement, or if people swallow or lick their lips or things like that while they're talking, especially if they're doing a longer phrase, we can kind of eliminate some of that. But again, if you're doing a voice recording on your phone and then uploading it to your computer, or directly recording it onto your device, we can't really assist or improve the quality all that much. So I recommend a good quality device. And then if you're doing legacy banking, you don't need any sort of high-tech device. You can record that directly onto your phone if you want. But if you do want it on your device and you want it to be of a higher quality recording, I would probably recommend getting a good quality device and a good quality recorder. And I'll go through that today, what I would personally recommend. So how to bank our messages. So this is often where I lose people a little bit. So if we can work through this, I think it will make a little bit more sense. And this is what I'll be demonstrating at the end, if everyone can stick with me and make it to the end of the presentation. So the process looks like a lot, but there are honestly only 9 steps. So, and about 5 of them you're going to be, supported if you want by your speech pathologist. So, essentially what's going to happen is you're going to get a recording device and you're going to record your messages. So this is for voice banking specifically. You're going to record your messages, whatever it is that you want to record. There are a couple of resources out there that actually have documents that you can read and record. So if you are stuck for where to start, you can just look up those documents and start recording. I normally say though, if you start recording just family members' names, then you get into the groove of it and it'll become quite natural. You'll pick a company website, a company you'll be able to upload your message banking to. You'll create a login. Again, this can all be done externally by your speech pathologist if you'd like. You record them onto an SD card, unless you're doing something that's like a phone or anything. But specifically today, I highly recommend a good quality recorder, and all the good quality recorders that I recommend have an SD card. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. You'll have an SD card, you'll record the messages on there, you'll take the SD card out, pop it into your desktop, copy and paste them into a file, and then as you can see probably here, you upload. Press upload, go to the file, you can upload hundreds and hundreds at a time. So then you leave your computer to upload, and then they're all in the system. You click view my messages. So this is an example. You'll get something like this. The computer estimates what it thinks that you've said. I apologize if it's small and you can't see that. It will make sense of my demonstration at the end. So you will have a text for what the computer has estimated the recording to be. The reason why it does that is that it's going to show you a percentage, and then we use often those ones that are of a high percentage, select them and take them for our voice banking. So you can see here that's the recording, so it's number 35 of the recording, number 51. It's not overly important to you guys. You've got your text. So this example is, don't be so ridiculous. The computer is 97% sure that that's what it says. You play it to check. And again, I often do this for a lot of my clients because it's just an extra step that they don't want to have to do, and I'm happy to do that. We press play, we check the recording. If it's all good, we give it a tick, and then we're good to go. So then that's exactly how it'll show up on your device. So we label it, and then we, over here is how we categorize. So we play each message, we check the accuracy, create a category if it's relevant, and then we go download all. It goes into a folder onto your desktop, and then we send that to your device. So, the only part really that is done independently is the recording process, if that works for you guys. Some people are really confident with the tech and they have absolutely no concerns. And I have clients that I set them up with a recorder and then they call me back out when it's time to put it onto their device. It's, I guess, be really guided by your client, or I'm very guided by my participants with how much input they want. It can be a deeply personal process. So I'm not going to come out and sit and listen to you record messages if you're recording really private messages or pet names for your wife. I can completely appreciate that you want to do that in private. So as long as you can, and I spend a lot of time providing education. So I will go, this is how you record, this is how you stop recording. And I will get them to demonstrate that. Some people record and then they record 50 messages in one recording and then they press stop. So I spend a lot of time educating, pressing record, taking your finger off, pressing record, taking your finger off. And then when the SD card is full, some of them call me and say, can you upload this to my computer? No worries, I upload it to the message banking system and then I leave. I can also support family members in upskilling in that. And, you know, it's about 50-50. Some people just don't want the burden of having to deal with the technology, and I can appreciate that. So, yeah, I come out and do it. The system is very similar for, I should mention that this is, when we go back to this, so when we say import messages onto your device, this is what it will look like. So this is a screen grab of a device that, you know, we have tagged or categorized the recordings that this person has done to, you know, the top level, like the important ones that she says regularly, categories about family, food and drink, and greetings. So this is a very neat screen grab. It sometimes is not always this neat because people have, you know, 50 million different categories that they want, and that's completely fine, but just note that it doesn't always look this neat. So her example is that she's recorded onto a message banking app. Goodbye, hello, I'm fine, thank you, my name is Natasha. Something to note, which is probably important now, and this is only one system, so all systems look different. This is the one that we generally see pop up the most, and some of you may already be familiar with it, is that you can actually record directly into this. So, you know, record your own personal message. You can type something out, record it, and then it's saved there. So, you know, if you're not wanting to pursue voice banking, you can access message banking directly onto your AAC. I don't really want to delve too much into that today because I think it probably, that's a lot to do with the tech. And I really want to, you know, maybe set up a time where I could do a different demonstration on that, because I think the tech it's a lot to get your head around. So, you know, it probably requires its own demonstration. So, you know, this is banked messages. We've set the category, we've set the recordings, we've uploaded them. The system is very similar for voice banking. You create an online account, you record the nonsense phrases, they're provided for you. You create a file, you save it to your desktop, you upload, you send off, and it honestly says upload, you know, complete, send to whatever company it is that you're using, and then you will get an email back with a document, and then you listen to the sample. If you're happy, you download and pay, and then we import. So again, because it's often, if your speech intelligibility is really strong, you can, you know, sit at the computer with your recording. You record with, you know, directly with your your high-tech quality recording device, and then you can have that plugged into your computer, and then it goes directly onto the file. So as long as you have a good quality recording device, it's all pretty seamless. And again, because it's not personal or personalized, we can, you know, a speech pathologist can sit with you through this process, help you record the nonsense phrases and upload it, and you can do that in a session. So, and I have had people do that in a session. So again, depends on how good a quality your voice is. So I make it sound like it's, you know, 8 simple steps and you're done. With the message banking, there is a chunk of recording to do in between. So I guess, why do we use it? I feel like I maybe have already explained this, but really it's just a way to maintain dignity and choice and control. You know, besides what's on the screen, it's a way of maintaining social connectedness. If you don't have a system in place, it can be really isolating, you know, particularly if you don't have a device that has a voice attached to it. So if you do things like sign language, or you do, you know, low-tech devices, that can be really isolating, you know, and I think it avoids some communication change or breakdown between communication partners. Particularly with the voice banking, I find that family adjust to that quite well, because they're constantly, you know, they always have that same vocal quality. So the adjustment period for families is often really quite smooth. So it obviously maintains that. But, you know, people say that impairment in communication has been described as a terrifying experience for the critically ill, and it's a significant factor in the assessment of pain and other symptoms in patients. So for somebody who has MND, where their symptoms are constantly changing, I think it's, you know, it's really important to be able to advocate for yourself in a way that's really effective and that's going to be listened to. It's also a way that you can, you know, really effectively participate in decision making and about your treatments, and, you know, provide a really honest update on how you're feeling, especially if you're somebody who is very organized, like, you know, I probably would be, and record, you know, genuine statements of I'm not feeling well today, I don't feel like talking to you right now. I would probably spend time recording those. So in the situations where maybe you're not feeling like you want to communicate, or you're not feeling like you really want to advocate for yourself to have some peace and quiet, you can do that, and the message will be conveyed in a way that, you know, makes sense to people, or they're going to be able to really gauge your how you're feeling because of the way that your voice sounds. So if you say just stop, you know, that's going to come across as in, okay, he really means that, rather than just stop. So you know, I think if it's not self-explanatory, you know, it's just a way to, you know, give people their dignity, maintain their dignity, I believe. So the equipment. So this kind of stuff is probably a bit more of the boring stuff, so we can kind of race over it. Each speech pathologist will be different. If any of you become my clients after today, I will be recommending this is the recording device that I can't go past. So it's this little device over here, the H1N. It's about $175 and you get the whole bundle, and you can purchase them online. We can help support you with that. Often we send off a quote, and if you're within NDIS, we can send the quote directly to your provider and they purchase it. Or if you're self-managed, you can go ahead and purchase it, and if you need a letter of support, we can do that later, but often we don't need to do that. So you definitely need the recorder. I recommend having something that can cut through the noise, and it will really help with eliminating background noise. So if you live on a farm and you've got lots of birds around and lots of wind, this little cushion, it sits on top and it kind of helps eliminate that. You will get a tripod. Not all tripods look like this. You'll get a recording cable which can plug into your computer, and which means that you can save directly onto your computer. A charging port, and that's pretty much it. That's kind of all you really need, besides, you know, as far as external stuff goes. And then you'll obviously need a computer, internet access, batteries, because it is battery powered, an SD card, and ideally a quiet place. I do highly recommend, though, because it is portable, and so if you're not recording directly onto your desktop, I tell my clients to have this in their pocket 24/7, which seems excessive until they perhaps go out for breakfast, or they perhaps go on a long drive with their spouse and they say something and they get a good laugh and they think, I'm going to record that. Without their recorder, record the device, it's on there. And it's, you know, rather than writing it down and doing it later, it often doesn't have the same kind of effect. You know, reading something, so if I am reading, hi, how are you? That doesn't sound exactly like how I would say it. So that's why we say have it in real time, and because you've got the system, so the the cushion, and we can adjust some of these settings here, you can eliminate a lot of that, background noise. But often if you're in a quiet environment, sitting at home, I have clients that, every afternoon he does 30 minutes, he sits out on his deck, has a cup of tea and does his recordings. So, his recordings are pretty high quality, and we don't really need to adjust any of the settings. So he's pretty independent with that, just turns it on and off. There are some limitations if you have some deterioration in your upper limb movements. You obviously need to be able to press the record button. So what can happen is we can sit it on your desk or your table or your lap where your finger is on the record button, and we can get you a headset that can plug into the device. So then you've got kind of like what Stacey's wearing, if everyone can see Stacey, a good quality, headset with a mic that's nice and close to your face. If you have one of those plugged in, all you need to be able to do is just press record and stop. This is, I guess, when we do start to see the deterioration in the upper limb movements. That's where sometimes speech pathologists or families do have to be a bit more hands-on in the recording process, which again is why we say start recording as early as possible. I guess often, I find, and this is not going to be the case for everyone, is that if I set them up with a system, of sitting it on their lap recording, I perhaps then go and do something else, or they come into the office and I leave them in the clinic space for an hour and I come back. They call me if they need any help. And they can do their recordings and we can make sure that they're of a pretty high quality. I typically wouldn't leave them by themselves until I check that they're actually, pressing it on, pressing it off, pressing it on, pressing it off, okay? That can be fatiguing. So again, they might do 15 and stop. That's completely fine. It just means the process is going to be a bit longer for those clients. So, there are a couple of barriers in place, but, I haven't found that we haven't, gotten through all of them. So, if you've got a good speech pathologist who's familiar with the equipment, or if you've got, a good support system, or you yourself, are reasonably invested in the process, then I do find that there's really, no major barriers. So, and the recording is pretty adequate. So if you do have a good quality headset, again, it can be purchased through your funding. And if you're unable to locate one, or if you don't already have one, we can, I've got a couple of recommendations. I just haven't included them today because not many people need them, or not many of my clients have needed them, and some of them decide, look, I'm not worried about the headset, I'll just use my headphones from my iPhone. And I don't recommend that, but if it's easy for them, and if we are noticing a deterioration in their verbal communication, I say, yep, get to it, start the recording, and we'll get the process of getting you some better headphones later on. So I guess that's the equipment that you need. So nothing too extensive, and often we can get all of this within, we can get it pretty quickly. So I guess I just wanted to touch on some of the programs that, I use and that I've seen other clients using. Some people come to me with the banking already commenced, and they have other programs. So far, I haven't come across one that I'm really unfamiliar with, or I've never heard of. These are kind of the ones that I've seen around the most, and they all kind of work in a similar way. They just have different fees. So these are a mixture of voice banking and message banking programs. And I guess it's just really up to personal preference. It's up to your clinician as well. So some of them may have, may have only used one certain program. It's completely fine. I wouldn't be recommending, chopping and changing consistently. We'll have a look at them, see which one makes sense to you, and then we'll create a login. So I personally have a login for a couple of these, just so then when I go out for my sessions, I can show clients, look, this is what it looks like. These are the steps involved. I guess a little disclaimer, this is not an exhaustive list. So if you do have a program that's not on here, by all means, not use it. I guess just be aware that, some clinicians aren't going to be have exposure to maybe whatever app you're bringing. So they all vary in price and guide as well. So some of them are quite expensive, so upwards of $2,500. So often I don't recommend those apps, only because, you know, there are programs out there that are really fantastic for a, you know, minuscule of the cost. So do your research, you know, pick a program that's going to suit you, and I guess really have a conversation with your speech pathologist about what is it that I want from this app, what am I able to do, how easy do I want the process to be, and then that can kind of help feature match you to a suitable program. And a lot of these guides are continuously kind of updating their processes. So a couple of the programs, their quality may not have been good or as adequate as the others, and then we've seen a bit of a turnaround and an improvement in program. Even just some of the programs are really, really user-friendly. So really big icons. They have, you know, verbal you know, auditory prompting to help you through it. So again, it's really just personal preference. So I guess if everyone's still with me, that's kind of the voice banking and the message banking process, a bit of a how-to guide. I did warn you, it was a lot of content, but you know, we're kind of getting to the big picture stuff now. So AAC, or Alternative or Augmentative Communication. So we call it AAC. A lot of people might call it assistive technology. Essentially, it's just a system that's going to support with communication. So for individuals with complex communication needs, often a speech generating device may be used for voice output communication. So essentially speaking out your message, and can be used for additional forms of communication, such as sending an email, Skype, social media, and some of the more high-tech devices. So not only are they a speech generating device, but you can actually access mainstream software and the use of specialized software. So things like programs that can control your home appliances, so your TV, your fans, your lights, particularly if you are in a wheelchair and you have access doing that and you feel like maybe you know, you're relying on other people to do that. You know, we can kind of gear your AAC device to meet your speech communication needs and your accessibility needs. So, you know, we can work quite closely with an OT to figure out, you know, look, we have this device, it's really high tech. We don't have to just limit it to use for communication. Some of our devices, and I am kind of talking more about our tablets and our iPads, we can put programs and apps on there. And when I say we, I'm definitely overselling myself a little bit here. I can do most of it. However, we work with a lot of technicians who do these programs that can come out on appointments with us and support us through like the tech side of things. So it can control, you know, obviously can assist with, you know, gaining back a lot of, you know, independence. So most of them are a specialized portable computer-based device, and it can offer these forms of communication and accompany the use of, you know, whatever kind of software that you want to do. And then obviously because it's portable, you can have access to that, you know, if you have Wi-Fi or if it's Bluetooth, you can have kind of unlimited, again, maybe overselling it, but you know, you can have unlimited access to all of these sorts of features. So it again is going to depend on what kind of device you have, but often I find with our tablets and our iPads, you're in Wi-Fi. If you've got Bluetooth, you know, you've got the access of a smartphone essentially. So what we look at for AAC is, you know, operating or accessing the device should be independent, non-fatiguing, and as efficient as possible. So this is often where I find, you know, it potentially takes up more time and effort, not effort, but more time and trialing than the voice banking and message banking. So even though all of that other stuff I've explained can be quite complex to wrap your head around, this is often where your speech pathologist will really be involved in navigating and recommending and supporting you through getting you like the device that's, you know, suitable for you. So not everyone is going to be suitable or want an iPad or a tablet. They may want a device that is only got their apps on it that they use for communication. So we could then not worry about getting an iPad, and we could get them a device that only is used for communication and only has that feature on it. So it's, again, really determined by the person and your speech pathologist. So often what we find is we will need to organise a trial for different AAC. So whether that is a tablet, a iPhone, an iPad, and then we will trial different apps or different programs on that we could use your voice banking and message banking through. So I guess keep in mind, and this is perhaps maybe suitable for another webinar, but today I'm talking about how you can use voice banking, message banking on a device for communication. You can use an AAC device and not have voice banking and message banking and get a synthetic like computer voice on it. So with what already comes on it, your Siri is typically what it will sound like. Some apps will also have some pre-programmed voices. They are often extremely computerized, and the accents are very limited. I believe we have 2 Australian accents, and they're Craig and Karen, and I probably wouldn't want them for myself. So remember, I'm talking specifically about utilising the voice and message banking on these devices. So we would trial the AAC with an app that is compatible with your software for voice banking and message banking. Please stay with me. I know it's it's a lot. So I guess more specifically, the use of eye gaze with our AAC. So I promise this will make more sense when you are linked in with a speech pathologist and they have a device that they can bring out and trial you with. You will absolutely need to trial eye gaze. There is no person who's going to be able to sit in front of eye gaze and use it perfectly the first time round. So you will absolutely need to trial it on whatever device that your speech pathologist and you are kind of gearing towards. So eye gaze is essentially a method of accessing a computer, which is, you know, in this instance, it's our tablet or our iPad. You're accessing the computer by your eyes. It sounds complex, but it's not. So things like eye gaze, eye control, gaze interaction, eye tracking, or eye gaze control, they're all kind of terms that are thrown around. They mean the same thing, an eye gaze. So it's without overcomplicating it. So eye gaze control technology allows a person to use the movements of their eyes, so looking around, to operate a device. Essentially the camera, which we can see here, not all of them look like that either. Essentially the camera located on the device and on the eye gaze picks up on the light reflections from your pupils, please stay with me, and its movements, which is then linked to the mouse on the computer. So you've got a red light sensor in the device that tracks your pupils. Wherever your pupils go, it is linked to the mouse and your mouse is moving around. People out there who have designed this technology have probably gone, oh dear God, but that's probably the easiest way of explaining the system. There are some limitations. If it's really bright inside, if you wear glasses, you know, it does interfere with the red light sensors accurately picking up your pupils. If you have some deterioration in one pupil or one eye, we can gear it to only pick up the other eye. If you have drooping eyelids, you know, we can accommodate that by positioning. So if your eyes are they are drooping and your pupils are sitting much lower, then we can position the eye gaze. So positioning is everything. So we can accommodate that for people who are in a wheelchair. So, you know, we can move the device around to sit in different positions, and we can mount it to your wheelchair. So be mindful that eye gaze has to be attached to a device. And in this scenario, we're going to use tablets or iPads because they're the most common that we use them with. So it means that your eyes can essentially control all the components of a computer. So whatever your mouse can do with your finger on it, your eyes can do the same. So you either dwell or look for a long period of time on something to make a click. You can blink and it'll make a click. Or there's another system which I'm going to talk about after. And it's pretty accurate. You know, if we can calibrate it, if we can get you in a position where you're getting good accuracy, people can be pretty independent with this. It can be extremely fatiguing though, initially, especially if you're somebody who doesn't spend much time in front of a computer. You know, imagine then sticking a screen in front of your face and then only working your eyes to make selections. So often people panic because they don't know where things are on the screen, which is why we don't use the blink feature. We use the dwelling feature, so people can look. And as long as they're not looking for, you know, 10+ seconds, we can edit that time frame as well. It's not going to make a selection. So you've got time to look around the screen and make the selection. It sounds very fancy. It is relatively straightforward when you see it in action. As long as your camera's in a good position, as long as it's not too bright inside, and as long as you're not experiencing, you know, extreme fatigue where you can only do, you know, 10 minutes of looking at a device, you know, it's pretty suitable for most people. So if you are in a bed rather than a wheelchair, we can get a different kind of mounting equipment and roll it up to your bed and you can have access to it. You know, if people are in a wheelchair, we typically get this mounted pretty quickly if it's suitable for you guys. I guess the add-on to that is, so you've got your dwelling, so you're looking for a long period of time, you're blinking, and then for those people who potentially have I guess fatigue or a little bit more inaccuracy with the eye gaze, we can use another option, like an adaptive switch. So your OTs, this is where we can work quite closely with your OTs. An adaptive switch is essentially like another access method. So they're often buttons or sensors. They look, you know, they're quite small. We can attach them to the body. We can attach them to the wheelchair. We can attach them to keyboards. They're very, very flexible. So it's essentially for people who have the movement limiting disability. So, and it uses, so you can look at something, and to save fatigue, we can look, we can click or make a switch. So for example, in this instance, I'm going to have a switch connected to my finger. I'm going to flex my finger and I've made the click. So this again, I believe my colleague Matt has already done a bit of a webinar on eye gaze. And it, you know, if he's delved into that a lot more, and I would recommend going back and looking at that, or, you know, chatting with your speech pathologist, because it's not as straightforward as what I'm making out. However, this is I guess the principles of it. So in the perfect world, this is how it works. We look, and if our eyes are strong and it's proficient, we look, we blink, or we look for 2 seconds, we make a selection. We either look, make a switch, and we've got a click. So you access your device completely free of, you know, big gross motor movements. So it can be very fast, you know, it often starts quite slow and people can get extremely proficient at it. I am yet to be able to beat some of my colleagues in my eye gaze selections, but I also experience a lot of, you know, visual fatigue, so I'm a lot faster with my looking and my switching. So this is a really, really fantastic system for people with MND because of the adaptability once the motor deterioration may happen. So, you know, it's definitely something that I see a lot within MND, and it works really nicely with our systems that we use our voice banking and message banking through. So with our switches, this is just a bit of an example of, you know, a minute amount of the switches that we can use. You know, some of them look like watches. They can be moved around the body. So, you know, your forehead, so that movement is making a switch. We can use them, you know, in headrest, so you can press your head against it, wrapped around your finger, bending like that, on your big toe, under your feet. So they can be really, really adaptive. So, you know, again, you get your device from your speech pathologist, you are trialing the device and the app on the device, you trial your eye gaze, and if necessary, you trial a switch. It should happen all in one go. Typically, I bring out all three in one go, just to show them this is without the eye gaze, this is without the switch. Let's see them all together and let's see which is more, which is future-proofing us, you know. So if we know MND, we can anticipate some decline in motor function. So if we have a switch there and people are practicing that and are proficient at it, when they need it, it's not going to be a big ordeal to get them used to it. Assistive technology or speech generating technology with, you know, not that much of a disruption. So I guess if everyone's still with me, I want to kind of talk about how it all works together. So, you know, we started off with discussing, you know, your banked messages. So you've got either your voice banking, your message banking, or the two. They're in a website over here. You've got your AAC plus a switch and eye gaze here. And then you've got, you know, how it all comes together here. So the setup, the downloading, and the implementation. So I guess it all sounds quite neat, separate, but then I guess it's bringing it together that can sound a bit daunting. However, again, just call your speech pathologist and, you know, or call your OT. If you're using switches, call them both. Or you can use your tech. So if you go with a specific company to use your eye gaze or your switch through, you can call them directly. A lot of them have fantastic support networks and support lines. A lot of them have really, you know, big windows of communication. So, you know, they're available 23 hours a day, some of them. Some of them will do home visits to help set up. Some of them like to attend with the speechies to make sure that there's no tech concerns. So you've got your three. So you've got lots of obviously people there to support you at this point. We would hope anyway. So you've got your banked messages, AAC, and then the implementation. So what we try and do is, by this point, you've already trialed the device, you've trialed the eye gaze, and you have trialed, if necessary, a switch. In this little scenario, I'm going to be doing, you know, double dipping. I'm going to be using a tablet with Microsoft Windows on it, and I'm going to kind of explain the outcome of that. So, for example, you've got your banked messages and you've got your AAC. So this is something, an example of what a device might look like. So you've got your tablet plus your eye gaze. Your eye gaze is typically magnetic, and your tablet comes in this kind of bracket. Everything looks a bit different depending on what company you go with, but this is the general gist. Most of them kind of look similar to this, and some of you may already have one of these. Your eye gaze device is plugged into your tablet, you've done the trial, you're really proficient at your eye gaze, and you've got a switch if necessary. So by this point, you know where you're going to head and you know how you're going to access your device. If you don't need a switch and you don't need eye gaze, obviously you can access the device with your hands. But in this instance, you need your eye gaze, and you need your switch. You then will get a system. I've chosen this system, and I'm sorry that it's a little unclear. I just wanted to make it really big for you to be able to see. I've chosen this example system or app or feature within an app where you've got a chat, you've got your texts, you've got the ability to answer calls, you've got your mobile phones, your texts, your SMS, your message banking where all of your messages are already stored, your social networks, so your Facebook, your Instagram, and your emails. So you've got a system like this. So this has then been downloaded onto your tablet of choice. You then will get, so essentially what's happened is you've got your device. So if we go back to this screen, you've got your device, you've got your system that you've chosen, and then your speech pathologist will come along and get your tablet and download the files from your email, or Bluetooth them to your device. You will then open them up and you will have this system. So if we go back, I'm looking, I'm switching, and I'm opening up this app. I'm looking, I'm switching, and I'm clicking on my message banking. So going back to the screen that I showed you guys before, so you will either look, switch, and go into this feature, and then you will have all of your banked messages there. So I'm going to look, switch, and select, I'm fine, thank you. So that is for message banking. So then I would be met with a recording that sounds exactly like myself. If I wanted to go back and go look, which chats, you will be met with, and I'm sorry for flicking, you'll be met with like a keyboard or a system that looks similar to this on the side. I will look at the letter I, switch, and hopefully everybody can see that you've got the option, potentially these blank spaces down here. That is where we would enable predictive text. So if I look at the I switch, I will get an I up here. If I look and then switch and look at the apostrophe, it is nearly always you will get the predictive features that you've recently used or commonly used phrases that other people use. So it would come up with I am, I'm fine, thank you. And then I would look, switch, press that. And then I would quick talk or speak, and it would come through in my synthetic voice. Sorry, in my message banked voice, because that's something that I've previously recorded. If I wanted to add to that, and I see somebody walking towards me and I want to type their name out, or I want to add a little something on the end that I know I don't already have banked, I will look, and then look, apostrophe, select the predictive text, or you can type out the whole thing, it's fine. And then comma, or I mean, grammar is important, but it's not for everyone. You know, it's you can type out, I'm fine, thank you. And then, you know, the next name could be, I'm fine, thank you, Catherine. Full stop, but how are you going? So if you haven't pre-recorded, but how are you going, you can type that out. And again, you'll use the predictive features, or I highly recommend using the predictive features to type out the rest of the message. And it will be half your message banked voice, half of your Siri or your synthetic voice. So it'll say, I'm fine, thank you, Catherine, but how are you going? So you will do all of that. You can do all of that by looking, clicking, looking, dwelling, looking, blinking. So that's you using your eye gaze device, your switch on your speech generating device, and accessing your banked messages. So it sounds complex, but people can get from A to B in a matter of seconds. So if you spend the time, especially, you know, we recommend using these devices well before you actually need them, or familiarizing yourself with them. So if you are newly diagnosed and you want to familiarize yourself, you can download a couple of free programs. You can familiarize yourself with where the apps, you know, how it looks. So then when you open it up, you're not panicked and you're not seeing these markers move around the screen and you think, oh my goodness, I don't know where anything is. I'm going to make a selection. I'm going to press something I don't want to. So we can increase the dwell time for one, but also if you're familiar with it, you can go exactly to where it is on the screen that you need. If you're obviously really familiar with a keyboard, that makes things really fast as well. So you can look, click, look, click, look, click. Some people are, aren't that proficient at typing, but love the predictive text. So they press something and then they immediately look at the predictive text for a shortcut. So, if you're familiar with things that you've banked, if you type something out, you're going to kind of know whether to anticipate your real voice or your synthetic voice. But often it doesn't really matter if people have done the two, because 9 times out of 10 people are pretty happy with their synthetic voice as well. It's more for those times where you're saying really nice specific things. So I love you, where you know that you would have banked that, and that to expect your banked voice. So this is again a very neat version of what it looks like. And often what happens too is if you type something in this keyboard over here, we will have a separate category or a separate section where things that you type actually appear in here as well. So then it can be another shortcut if you're only accessing this sort of feature. What you can also do is if you type something and then go back into this section, remember this is only one example of one app. All features might be different. You can go into this, the thing that you've just typed, press it, and you will have a little button down here, a little recorder. You can say, I want to bank that message, press it, record your message, and then it's saved into this greeting, and we can just drag and drop it into categories. I would recommend doing that, focusing on doing that after you've spent the time familiarizing yourself, or at least until you've got a couple of things banked on there. I'd be, not focusing on that, because you're going to want to familiarize yourself with everything else. But it does allow you, once you've got your synthetic voice and you've got your big kind of folders of all your banked messages, it does allow you the flexibility. So if you have a recording, so I'm fine, thanks, and you haven't bothered recording any other kind of version of that, it does allow you to go into that and say, I just want to type, I'm fine. So I'm fine, record, save. And again, this could take a couple of sessions to really kind of understand and implement, and your speech pathologist, can do it in chunks. So focusing just on the banking, focusing just on the AAC, and then focusing just on the implementation of that. So often I don't even talk about this with clients until they're up at that point. And some of them go, look, it's way too much information. Talk to me when I need it. I just want to focus on getting my recordings out, or I just want to focus on actually being able to use the eye gaze. So, you don't have to, I normally wouldn't present this much information and this much detail to a client in my first session. So if everyone's still with me, fantastic. But I would definitely not expect that people would leave today and be confident with the systems and the programs. It's definitely something you're going to need to revisit with other people, and I am more than happy to answer any set questions, or provide a bit more of a demonstration if you need. So I guess to finish up, I just wanted to talk about what the speech pathologist role is. So I've kind of touched on when I think a speech pathologist should be coming on board. I guess, essentially a speech pathologist can be there from day one to the day that you're implementing that system at home and communicating functionally. They can be there in just, as you need. I typically have that very frank discussion with my clients. How much involvement do you want me to have? How much support do you need? Do you want to put time limits on things? So then, in 3 weeks' time, you've used the eye gaze every day, or in 3 weeks' time, you've done your 700 bank messages, I come back out and we do our next demo session. So, I really talk about what it is, that they want, how they want that service provided with my clients, because everyone is different. Something to consider also, and it is a bit of a frustrating one, because we want to be able to provide as much support, endless support to our clients. However, if they are on the NDIS, and I can assume most of you are, funding's going to impact on the level of support sometimes that can be provided. So, we can set you up and we can do a really good demo session, and then it may be that if we can go, okay, unfortunately I can't come back out face to face, but here's a video to support you, or call me if you need. So we can make adaptations to how much support and how we provide that support to our clients depending on their funding. So we are kind of in the process, and maybe watch this space. Now that I'm saying it out in public, I will be made accountable for it. But we are trying to put together some resources that are a bit more user friendly, so then you don't have to listen to people like myself talking for an hour. You can go home in your own time and read something, and something can be a bit more compiled. So I also typically will provide a demonstration session. So some of my clients, I'll do my initial assessment, we'll decide that, yes, this is something we want to pursue. I get a device that we have on hand here. I take it out and say, okay, this is it in its entirety. Watch me use it. Have a go. Is it something you want to pursue? Yes, no, maybe. So I guess, the speechies have, their specialized knowledge. So, they are, most of them are, the experts in the field, so for supporting communication. So, really, pick their brains and really get them to support you, because, most of them hopefully will be able to do that. And you will be working also with the MDT team. So I know in my role, I've spent a lot of time within Better Rehab upskilling other our MDT team. So then, if an OT gets a referral for a switch to access, to use alongside an eye gaze, they're not going, good Lord, where do I start? I've kind of supported, and myself and my team, sorry, I should say, have worked with our MDT team to say, these are the sorts of things that you may, like the questions you may expect. These are the sorts of recommendations that you can make. However, come and chat to us and we can continue providing support. But really, our role is education, recommendation. Education and recommendations does not stop. It should be happening all the time, because it is a complex system and it's a really different way than verbal communication. Assistance as necessary, uploading to the communication device, and then obviously the implementation of the communication device in a functional way. So is the person able to make a selection? Are they able to make a request? Are they able to make a statement? And that's, I guess, how we would then measure it from an outcome perspective. And then communication partner training. Is your wife able to turn on your device if that's necessary, if we don't have a sensor to turn it on for you? Is your partner able to upload the recordings if you don't have the funding for me to come back out? And then obviously once it's implemented, monitoring and maintaining. So updates, if they want continual support with uploading messages, do that. I guess a little figure that I wanted to point out is that, 8 out of 10 people with MND do experience some kind of change or difficulty with communication. That can seem very confronting for maybe some of you who, don't have a communication difficulty at the moment. However, I just think it's a really important figure to flag, because, not everyone will need this level of support. Not everyone will lose their communication capacity. I should say verbal communication capacity. However, if you do and you don't have a system in place, that's when we notice, the biggest kind of stress and anxiety and difficulty with maintaining, connections. So if you don't have an issue with communication, it's not a bad idea to kind of pre-prepare. I think John Costello, who is the creator of this kind of system, he said, all I can hope for is that I'm wasting your time. So, if all we're doing is pre-recording your messages and you never need them, I'm still pretty happy with that, because then they can still be used from a legacy banking perspective. So just some you know, food for thought, I guess. So I guess if somebody in this presentation or somebody watching this at a later date is thinking, I don't have any of these systems in place and I've never heard of them, but I'm still not sure if they're right for me, do you have MND? Because in my opinion, everybody should be getting on board with this sort of stuff. Even if you think you might not need it, you can just do your voice banking. If you think you're never going to need it, that's fine. Just do your voice banking. Record the 50 to 200 phrases or 300 phrases, and then you've got a synthetic voice sitting there at no cost to you. Have you noticed any change in your communication or swallowing? You know, have you noticed any change in your upper limb movement? When we start to notice those two sorts of things, change in communication and change in upper limb movement, we can then anticipate, okay, well, we know that accessing the device directly, probably not going to be suitable for them in the long run. So they're automatically, we're going to need an eye gaze device and a switch. And then I guess the next step is meet with your speech therapist, meet with your support coordinator, meet with Stacey, and get the ball rolling for, you know, maybe some additional education and support with this. Familiarise yourself with the research. There's a lot out there. One resource that I will recommend, and I harp on about this a lot, so if any of my clients are in this chat, then I'm sorry, but the Boston Children's website has some phenomenal resources and can really, really help with the process of this from A to B. So John Costello, the creator of this, or kind of the person who has been the navigator for this, he works at the Boston Children's Hospital. So all of his stuff is up there, and he's got many, many, many YouTube videos. So familiarize yourself with the research, but also just with what's out there. You know, it's a lot of stuff to sift through. So talk with your family. Ask them what their expectations are. You know, ultimately it is your communication system. However, you know, I've been out to clients and they say not interested, and I get a call half an hour later and their wife says he will absolutely be doing that. So you know, talk with your family and see what are they wanting to be able to maintain as far as your communication capacity goes, and then what is it that you actually want to record. You know, some people don't mind that they don't have the message banking done. I have not had a single person ever regret doing this, particularly ever regret doing the message banking. You know, often it gets overlooked because the voice banking is flexible, it's quicker. But, you know, people who have just voice banking do often say, I do wish I banked a couple of things that, even if it's not from the capacity of banking 700 banked messages, I do often get met with, I do wish I had a recording of me saying good night, love you kids, or something like that. That's a bit more meaningful in their own voice. So I will leave that with you to have a bit of a think about. So recap of key points. Message banking is a recording of phrases and sentences that reflect your personality. Voice banking is you get a synthetic voice. AAC, it's a system which can supplement or replace verbal communication. You've got your eye gazes and switches. It's an alternative access method if you're unable to access the device with your hands. It's also a way to navigate and control the device. And then a bit of a how-to guide on how to, to complete A to B for your banking. And potentially even uploading. So again, I can spend a bit more time with those of you who might need the support to support you through that, downloading and uploading and all of that sort of stuff. So my take-home messages, I guess, for today would be that if you don't already have a speech pathologist, get one on board. Not to toot our own horns, but we are, this is kind of our bread and butter. It's my bread and butter anyway. So I love talking about it. I love helping people, and I absolutely adore seeing the end result. So make a referral as soon as possible, even if it's just to get a bit more education. Begin recording today if you are able to. Or investigate your options for other voices. be open-minded to the experience. I know it can sound really morbid having things like a donor banker and, you know, legacy banking and things like that. However, the benefit outweighs all of those sorts of kind of maybe unusual morbid feelings that you might get with talking about, you know, losing your communication and having something talk for you. You know, all of us, I hope all of us can, you know, respect the fact that this is a really complex situation. I don't envy having to make the decision about whether you want to bank your messages or record your voice. However, it is such a beneficial program that I really, really recommend. And often don't underestimate what motivation can do for this experience. So if you're not really kind of half-hearted in it and you're not really sure if it's something you want to do, I often find that those people, the process becomes a lot more effortful and a lot more drawn out and a lot more, I guess, just a bit of a mission. And perhaps, you know, if you're really committed to the experience and you're motivated, and somebody who is potentially a bit more physically able or has a really good support system with them, they can knock this recording over within 2 days. So they can be up and running and very functional with a bit of, you know, recording across 2 days. And then if you can wait 3 days, you get your synthetic voice and you can be up and running within a week. And I guess just understand that it's a way to maintain your dignity, your social connection, and your personality. So if I can quickly just show you, and if Stacey can just give me back the control.
I think you should be okay. Give it a go.
So if I go new share, because I can't share my desktop, I believe. If I go into this system. So pretend you've seen my desktop and there's a folder sitting on there that says message banking, and it's got some recordings that I've done today for you. And a couple of them are from my colleagues as well. So this is a program that I am just going to show you, but remember there's other message banking programs out there. I've created my free account. I'm going to log in. And I've already, you know, recorded my messages on my iPhone, and I saved them to my desktop. So that is, I've recorded them on my iPhone, I've emailed them to myself, I've saved them, I've right-clicked, saved them into a folder, and then now I'm going to upload them to my message banking to check if they're of a high quality. We can anticipate maybe they will not be because I did them on my phone. So I will go upload, and I'm going to go desktop, I'm going to go message banking, and if everything is working well, this should upload and everything is fun. So this is a recording. I believe this is going to be a recording from my colleague, not myself, thank God, because no one wants to hear 2 lots of my recordings. So then we're going to, I'm just going to minimize this, and then we can go to transcribe to English in the United States. I think I did mention that you can record all your message banking in different languages. So for people who are bilingual, they can have their synthetic voice who, you know, sounds like their English speaking version, and then they can record it in a different language as well. And then we can also, so you can have a mixture of 2. You just have to select which language it is that you're talking in. And then you can do your message banking in a set language as well. So I'm going to press start. It's going to upload. Be mindful that that's quick because it was 1 recording. If you're uploading 1,300 recordings in one go, you can anticipate it's probably going to take a little bit of time. I'm going to go view my messages. And then there it is. So if you guys can see this, I'm not too sure what the recording quality will be like coming through the speakers. However, I'm going to play it for you, but the computer is 92% certain, without actually hearing anything, that the message is, what's the weather like in Melbourne today? So I know that that's actually what the recording is, so I'm pretty happy with that 92%. The reason why it's maybe not 100% is it was done on a phone, you can potentially hear a little bit of lifting to the mouth and putting down. So I'm going to play it for you. Hopefully this works and it's not treacherous. Could you guys hear that?
No.
Damn. New technology would fail me somewhere. So a little disclaimer, it was perfect, but there was a bit of background noise. I promise you it was perfect. So what I will be trying to do too is to create like a bit of an online version for people to go and have they'll have my password, a bit of a public system where people can go in and listen to my recording, and I will purposely be doing hopefully recordings that are a bit poor so you can get the percentage. So it's really frustrating that you couldn't hear that, but you can print all your messages as well so you know which recording is which. And then what I will do is, I would delete all of that. And then I would change that. That's what it's going to come in, or that's what it's going to be tagged as on your device when we label it. I'm going to create a tag and say, it's a greeting. So then I know that when it comes to, even uploading, we're going to, depending how your speechy does it, they might only upload certain tags at a certain time, just so then if something happens, it's not really overwhelming and there's not 1,300 floating around. And then we would download all, and then it would go into a file. So if we go download, where it says several minutes, and then that's our file. So we would then copy that onto our device, and that is how it will come through. So I know that's really simple. It looks really simple because there was only one recording, but different programs will look different. I guess I don't know if this is going to work, and I'll play a quick snippet, and Stacey, if you can just give me a little shake if it's not working, and I'll just stop the video. But I did want to show you guys this, and if you can't hear it, I would recommend going and listening to this. So it's just voice bank versus message bank. It was put up by John Costello, and he is showing you, so he's banked his own voice and he's got a synthetic voice, and he is showing you the difference between how they sound. So I'll just see if it plays. I'll see if maybe I'm doing something. Can you hear that?
No.
Okay, so I do recommend going and having a little look at that. So the sentence that he says is, "You are the love of my life," and it comes through as, "You are the love of my life." How you would maybe say it to the person that you're trying to say that to, versus the synthetic version. So it's a really nice comparison, and he does a couple of different quite funny examples of things, and it just showcases the comparison between the two really nicely. But I feel like if everyone is familiar with what a Siri voice sounds like, so on their phone, if not, go and activate that on your phone and listen to that, and that's going to be essentially what a synthetic voice would sound like, versus you compare it to your natural sounding voice now. So yeah, I guess that is pretty much me done. So are there any questions? I imagine that's probably a lot to digest. So if there aren't, you can send me an email down there. And I've actually just realised I put my email address incorrectly. It's 2 R's. So I was saying before that my fear is that somebody would notice a spelling mistake or something on here. Like, that's just not good for business. And I just found one. So it's better with, and then Rehab, so 2 R's. So if anyone wants to, I might stop sharing my screen. And then I guess if anybody has any questions, shoot through and.
Thank you so much for that, Georgia. That was awesome. And what we'll do is we'll post the link to that YouTube video along with the video to make things easy for everyone. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask?
I've been hiring one of these for some months and playing with the Tobii eye gaze and tablet, and it even activates my Google Home Assistant. So it's pretty good.
Excellent. Andrew, did you want me to ask your question?
Sorry, this is just a sort of question for the future. What progress is there in translating thoughts into speech?
Was that translating songs?
Thoughts.
Thought. Oh, you could be asking somebody that probably doesn't know all that much about that. Translating thoughts into speech. Unfortunately, I can't really answer that. I guess we're dealing with more the verbal communication at the moment. Who knows what the future holds for us? I guess the systems that we do have in place now, though, are extremely functional, and hopefully, with a little bit of forward planning, you can really kind of nut out some of those thoughts that you might be having. And I guess with the voice banking, you know, any thought that pops into your head, you can type that out and write that out.
All right. Any other questions? No? All right. Well, thank you all for sticking with us. That was really helpful, Georgia. I really appreciate you going into such depth. Yeah, we've got a message there to say thanks, Georgia. Wonderful presentation. So as usual, we'll get this up on our website. So if there's any bits that you want to refamiliarize yourself with, then the information will be there. All right.
Please feel free to send me an email to like the correct email address. But Stacey has my contact details if you guys have any questions, and I'm happy to kind of talk you through that, especially if you're not already linked in with a speechy. And enjoy the process if you guys are doing it at the moment, and good luck with it all.
Excellent. All right. Well, I will let you all go. Nice to see everyone. Thanks again, Georgia. Have a great day, the rest of you.
Thanks, Georgia.
Bye.